You're listening to TeaLife Audio, a podcast about the Japanese way of tea and related arts. For show notes and other resources, go to tealife.audio.
Welcome to episode 161. My name is Anthony.
My name is TJ.
And my name's Adam.
It's great to see everybody.
Yeah.
How's it going? Good to see you too.
Glad you're back with us, Adam. It's exciting to have you.
Great to be here.
It's exciting to be together. We're going to talk about New Year's today. Think about getting ready for the Year of the Dragon to come. Bring us all these wonderful, exciting things that are going to come with the dragon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When is New Year? I don't even know where to start with this topic. There's so much to talk about.
That's a really great question. When do you guys really observe New Year?
Well, with my family, I celebrate New Year's on New Year's because luckily we have vacation during this time. And let's say, like my family here in the U.S., we don't really do anything for New Year's, so it's a nice time to just bring the family into the tea room and have some tea right on the first. So I celebrate it based on the Gregorian calendar on the first. How about you?
Well, being Australian, all my New Year's memories until I started tea was being at some big music festival somewhere in the middle of summer, off my face. I think one of the best memories was seeing Blondie and being on the front row watching Debbie Harry do her thing one New Year's Eve. That was pretty damn good. But then in the tea world is the first. There's an intimate gathering at Wafudo, and then pretty much the whole of January is taken up with different Hatsugamas from different groups. And then we have the little big thing called the lunar calendar, which most of the traditions are actually based on. They then get moved to the Gregorian calendar, which is a bit weird. So I think there's a bit of due to the lunar calendar and some sort of celebration there too.
Yeah, it's been an on and off again thing with my teacher. Often, because of my sort of insistence, we move our Hatsugama to Lunar New Year. And with my own students, I do Hatsugama on the lunar calendar, which is late this year. It's not until February 10th. But
that's right, yeah.
Somehow, just that purist deep down inside of me, I'm sure that surprises no one, just wants to observe it with the lunar calendar, especially because we're dealing with the Chinese zodiac. Then it should be on Chinese New Year.
That makes sense, but yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like tea schools even do that, right? I mean, it's I think Japan in general does New Year's on the first of the year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do they call Lunar New Year? Shogatsu? Is that right?
So old.
I've heard it.
Could be.
Little New Year or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to go. There's so much to unpack. But it was always fascinating for me when I was living in Japan, receiving all those New Year's cards with all the, the next Chinese horoscope, and it was the 1st of January, and okay. And all the ume plums and everything. It's not for another month yet.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, when you observe it in the lunar calendar, it actually feels like the idea that it's the beginning of spring, the very first moment of spring, is maybe a little bit more believable than January 1st.
There's if you like the Gregorian calendar, if you think of it in terms of like the solar calendar, there's great reason to celebrate the solar New Year as much as there is a lunar New Year. So there's some sort of reconciliation there, I think, to create two events and celebrate them both. In my shachi we have Hatsugama according to the solar New Year, and then I encourage everybody to have their own sort of private meditation for the Lunar New Year, like Lunar Wabicha. There's a really nice record in the Namporyoku, whether it's true or not, of course, we never know, but it's still beautiful. And Rikyu on the Lunar New Year does tea for himself. He does obukucha, actually, with a tenmoku on a daime mat, I think he does. Can't remember exactly. So to use that as like a nice little personal reflection time to mark it with however you want to do something, but then a more communal vibe for the solar new year is how we structure things.
What is obukucha again?
This is probably our most significant thing that we have in the Ueda Sokoryu for New Year's, which is a special type of tea. We use it for usucha. You can do it in koicha too, but it's traditionally done in usucha. It probably freaked most people out. So directly into the usucha, we put an umeboshi, a sweet black bean, and sancho pepper. And it tastes effing awesome. It's bloody delicious. Because all those flavors just work unbelievable in the matcha. I've never had anybody that's not been impressed. I mean, like Westerners and everything, people from all different cultures that have drunk this. When I've done events related to New Year's, everyone's sort of like, wow, this does all right. I know that other schools do it too, but I think, and I've never really been able to pin down these traditions with any exactness, but I know that like some have like kombu and eat that before they drink the tea and so I'm not exactly sure. Maybe and what does something, don't they, TJ?
You usually do hear people talk about it. I don't know whether people are putting things in the matcha when they do obukucha or whether they're just calling it obukucha because it's the new year. I've also heard of people like sprinkling gold leaf flake over koicha and serving a bowl of koicha that has gold flake floating on the surface as obukucha. My understanding is the tradition, like the term and the tradition of obukucha, goes back to there was what's called a hijiri, sort of a wandering holy man whose name was Kuya, and he's associated with this temple in Kyoto called Rokuhara Mitsuji. And he was famous for the nembutsu, like chanting nembutsu and sort of spreading that tradition around. And there was a big epidemic. This was like in the 950s, give or take. Somebody can check those dates.
Yeah. No, I'm going to check them for you in a second because I've got an alternative story which is around the same time.
Cool.
Yeah. Keep going.
An epidemic going on in Kyoto, and Kuya sort of begins serving tea out of the Rokuhara Mitsuji, and supposedly he put umeboshi and kombu in the tea, and that's one version of how this tradition of obukucha got started, or big luck tea, right?
Big luck. Oh, yeah. Well, actually, your story makes me think of another, actually a 4-character way of writing obukucha. But I'll give you the alternative story. It was Emperor Murakami, who lived, I think he died 967 or something like that. Apparently in a dream, the goddess of mercy came to him in a dream and said, make this tea and you'll solve the plague or whatever that's going on and causing all your people havoc. And so he whipped it up for himself and made him feel pretty good, and then he suggested everybody should drink it and apparently got everybody out of the predicament. Don't know where they got that much tea from. But anyway, so that's the alternative story that we're told, along with obukucha teaching. And there's 1, 2, 3 or 4 ways to write obukucha. And according to this story, the original characters were all, as in like Osama, a king, fuku, as in ippuku, nifuku, sanbuku, the counter for tea. Cha, so the tea that the emperor drinks.
I see.
And an alternative one related to Buddhism is O, as in honorific, O, Bu, as in Butsu, and Buddha, Ku, as in Kuyo, you offer tea to the Buddha, and Cha, the tea that's made as an offering to the Buddha. And the other one that we use today is like big luck tea.
Mm-hmm. That's the one I've always seen, is the 3 character.
Yeah.
So
there you
that's
go.
so interesting. I mean, so it sounds like regardless, it's about driving away illness, right? Both of those
from
stories.
that same time period. Yeah, same time period. And for the tea geeks, so for people that are brought up on all the Kyoto stories, because we're all about smashing the Kyoto patriarchy here at TeaLife. I don't know. Anyway, but one of the interesting things that comes out of this story is that there's very concrete evidence here in this story, both of these stories, that tea firmly existed in Japan before Eisai supposedly reintroduced it in 1191.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you talk to any director of any tea company, like one I'm good mates with in Hiroshima, he said that he always maintains that ever since tea was first cited in, was it the, I always get this wrong, it's not the Kojiki, it's the other one.
The Nihon Shoki?
Nihon Shoki, yeah. Where there's like a Buddhist ritual and they offer it to the emperor and then the monks in attendance. Ever since then, there's been tea plants in basically all temples and shrines around Japan. Especially Todaiji had a big plantation from a long time back. So, yeah, tea was what might have been reintroduced, as in Eisai got it going again with all his like literature and active promotion of how good the beverage was for human health and prosperity and that. But at least it existed in Japan before Eisai reintroduced it.
Well, and there's an oral tradition as well that Saicho brought tea into Japan as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and that would have been early 9th century when he went to China. So, so yeah, the Eisai story doesn't hold up very well. Not as a start.
It's
anyway.
Kyoto, mate. He picked Uji in the end to do it, and
right.
TJ, have you had obukucha before?
Not the way Adam described it, unfortunately. I'm really keen to try it, though. Adam, when you make that, do you just drop those things into the uscha after it's been whisked?
Yeah. You whisk the uscha, then you put the umeboshi in first. There's an order. So you put the umeboshi in, and then you take the black bean, you dip it into sansho. You don't need too much sansho because it's overpowering. And then you put that in along with the umeboshi. And if you're a geek like me, you'll try and balance it on the umeboshi in the middle, so you have like this nice little kagami mochi thing, and it looks really nice. Yeah, if you can get it to balance, and you can actually pass it over to the guest, and it's still balancing, it looks really attractive. And
then, what's the trick to eating it?
Yeah, we serve it with a kuromoji. In a chaji, of course, the guests will have a kuromoji with them when they have their sweet fukuocha, so they just keep that and use that to have the tea. But if it's not in the context of a chaji and they don't have a kuromoji with them, we serve it when you put them in. So you have some chopsticks and you have a sambo on the temai mat, where they have the ingredients like sort of offered to the gods, but they're there on the temai mat, and then you take them down with the chopsticks, and on the back of the envelope that you enclose the chopsticks and hold the chopsticks in, you have the kuromochi in the back of that. And we have like yonsun, so there's not as long as ura, and they're not as short as emote, they're in between. And so they sit nicely on the front of a chawan. So we just sit on there and hand it over to the guests, and away you go. So you drink the tea, and in whatever time that you wish to take the umeboshi or the kuromame or whatever, you can drink it with the tea, or you can use the kuromoji to fish it out. And we don't stab anything in warrior class tradition, so you sort of like guide it into your mouth if you need to, rather than sort of let them banging on the bottom of the chow and just let the umeboshi go plonk into your throat. And then you take the pip and like you can just suck on the pip for the rest of the session if you want, or you just take it out and spit it into some hanshi and put it away.
You've had this before, so when you enjoy it, do you sort of save a little matcha, like drink a little matcha, eat the stuff, have a little bit more matcha, or like what's the best way to get that flavor mixture to happen?
Yeah. No, it all works really good because it's there instantly. Like when you taste the matcha, you can taste all of them working together immediately. And we go through when I used to practice with the shachu in Japan. The shachu I was involved with often had some New Year's gigs at Wafudo. So it would be big business about trying to select the best umeboshi for that year that works best with so we'd have like tastings, 6 weeks in advance of like all these different umeboshi that people have collected. Like this is going to work better, and everyone would try. I don't know how many umeboshi I had on one Saturday night, and yeah, so the taste should be there as soon as you sip the matcha. So you'd select an umeboshi that allowed the flavors to work immediately, and the sweetness of the kuramame is there, and sancho of course is going to be there no matter what because it's so powerful. But yeah, I'd just drink it, and when you get the kuramame, that's a surprise. Bang, you've got that, great, and you can munch that while you're having the rest of the tea. And then at the end I usually have the umeboshi at the end. Yeah, it's usually at the end of a chaji too. So to have that as like the last thing of a chaji with the like matcha and umeboshi as like the taste to linger in your mouth as you're going home, is pretty damn good.
Oh, that sounds. I can't wait. I'm going to do it this year with my students. That sounds great. That's amazing. Especially in a cold New Year's morning, and not morning, like afternoon, and you're trotting home. You're absolutely exhausted in kimono, but it's just nice.
One thing I think that's interesting about it, and after hearing the names that you gave, Adam, I think Urosenke does something like it, but Urosenke likes to make tamais on everything, but there is no tamai for this, so it's almost like it's maybe not a thing for tea commoners to do. Not saying that it's discouraged or anything, but it just. I don't think it's very common, and it's definitely not formalized in our tradition in Urosenke.
Yeah. There's definitely in Mishna Koji, I've seen them have like kombu and umeboshi in the chashitsu. I've never known it. I don't know how they use it. Like it's Mishna Koji Senke. But,
I've seen this mixture used with sencha, but I don't know that I've ever encountered it as a matcha thing. So I'm very excited. Thank you so much for telling me about this. This sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. I'll send you the stuff like how to display and everything too. You might get a kick out of that because you'd have all the regalia, I'd imagine.
Yeah, probably so. What else do you guys like? What comes up for you as like things that you do when you want to observe the new year in the tea room?
Well, I just want to make a point. We're talking about how Ura doesn't have this. One of the things that people find quite surprising about some of the warrior class schools is that when our threads, so New Year's Hatsugama for us is a monski occasion, kuramonski, which would surprise a lot of people doing tea. It's like, wow, that's like, isn't it over the top? But kuchikiri is kuramonski and Hatsugama is kuramonski. And when we have our Soren qualification ceremonies, the host side is not the guest side can be too, kuramonski. So those are like the three things that we'd wear our best threads for, which is just a nice little anecdote, I guess. But
I think it's nice to have those moments, though. It's so many of these things really are about marking the passage of time, and that's part of how we mark time is with sort of a structure or a hierarchy of formality. And I think, it may be surprising to some people who are from Western traditions or Western cultures, because we don't have quite the same relationship to the New Year. But everybody in East Asia sees the New Year as being like the most important part of the year.
Yeah.
Like it's the most important day of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, traditionally, people's ages are gauged on the New Year, not their birthday.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, I think that's one piece that maybe takes a little time for us as Western practitioners to really internalize, is just how important the New Year is, that it is the most important holiday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, one of my favorite things that we do at the New Year, it's the only thing I've invested in Dogu-wise that is an annual thing, are Zodiac Kogo. That was my, like, instead of trying to buy tea bowls or something like that, I was like, okay, now I'll just do Kogo. They're small, they're easy to store, and I don't have to feel guilty that they only come out once every 12 years. But I really do love seeing them. They bring me a lot of joy to see those come out. And there's a part of me that almost doesn't want to do Sumi at New Year, because I want to put the Kogo in the Tokonoma, because I want everybody to just see it elevated in that way. They're just so wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the same. So it's so hard to find like just the right one too. Like, there's so many that are made, and the one that really appeals to you. There's quite an art of selecting them, isn't there? Out of the hundreds of different available options.
Yeah, it's taken me several years to put together a collection, and there are still a couple that are like, this one will do until I find the one. One of the best ones I've got, it's an old, like, bronze red ink, like the big ink pad, the big like cake of vermilion ink. So it's one of those holders with the ink gone, and it's got this beautiful ho-oh bird on it. So that's my Kogo for Year of the Bird, but it's enormous. Like it's as big, almost as big around as a tea bowl.
Yeah,
but it's cool.
Yeah, fantastic. What about alcove displays that we're going towards that way? That's probably one of the big characteristic things about New Year's, yeah?
Yeah. Anthony, I'm sure you guys do the circle of willow in the corner.
Yeah, and actually, during this time, I'm always looking out for a good willow tree if there's one to grab from. Yeah, I was just looking today while driving. I was like, but that's not near my home, but I would love to get from there. It was like drooping to the ground and very long, and you can make a nice loop with it. But yeah, that's always a thing for Urasenke.
Mm-hmm.
In summer in Australia, you'd always have to like strip them back of their leaves. It felt wrong. Yeah, we do that in Wiriryu too, Musubi Yanagi. You might have some ideas about this tradition. The tradition I heard where it comes from is ancient Chinese tradition. When people were traveling, they would be giving a branch of tied willow to suggest a safe return. Which is, I don't know, probably the most convincing story I've heard of the origin of this tradition.
Return, because it circles back on itself, right?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone's heard anything else about where it comes from.
I wonder if it might also, in Japan at least, have some relationship to the big rings that you see in the shrines in the summer that have to do with a story from the Kojiki time period where you're dealing with a kami who sort of stops through at these people's house, and first place he stops, they're not welcoming at all. So he goes on to the next house where they do welcome him. And as a result, he gives them this like braided ring of grass of some kind and tells them to keep that, and it wards off disease. And that's why you see those giant, what are they called? The big, you know what I'm talking about? The big, huge.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know what they're called.
Rings that are in the shrines in the summer that you can walk through is a reference to this particular, myth within the kami veneration tradition. So I've wondered if the if that, circle of willow has anything to do with that, but it seems far more likely, Adam, that your story is probably more accurate because it probably is a Chinese thing, right?
But nonetheless, like aesthetically, it looks pretty sick.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. I love it when they make a point to sort of have the willow sort of droop down onto the floor and just become a massive big feature of the chashitsu. Really, really nice. And you have that. Usually, you put a red and white camellia in, of course, with the kohaku suggestion, and the freshly cut bamboo vase. I don't know. This is what we do. Yeah.
If you can get it. Same thing with the camellia. In Colorado, it's not possible. We've really struggled here. I know several people who have tried growing camellia in Colorado. I have one friend who managed to keep a camellia alive for about 3 years. It bloomed once in 3 years, and then it died. My guess is that it's the lack of humidity here. For a while, I thought maybe it was the altitude, but I think they grow at high altitude in Japan, so I think it must be the humidity issue. They just don't do well here. Even my friend that had that one, he was taking it inside and outside and inside and outside constantly throughout the year. And it just, wouldn't work.
Trees, so even where I am, it would be difficult to, like, just a little bit more south. It works, but up here it'd be difficult. I mean, in the right condition and indoor, outdoor, I think you can make it work, but just out in the ground, it won't last.
Wow.
Where I grew up, because I'm from the Gulf Coast, the city where I grew up is so like Kyoto climate-wise, it's not even funny. Actually, the city I'm from is called the Azalea City. Mobile is known for its azaleas, and my parents have a camellia that's taller than the house.
Wow.
They're massive. I grew up around them and didn't appreciate them at all. And I'm very excited. My mother's actually driving out to visit me this winter, and I've told her, I just need you to cut a bucket full of camellia, and I'm going to give them out to all of my tea friends.
Yeah, I'd be so happy.
Yeah.
It's a classic. Yep.
We joke and say winter is the season of camellia and branch, except in Colorado where it's just branch. So that camellia becomes a really important one. I think one of the most striking arrangements I ever saw of camellia, somebody had put it in like an iga vase, and it was just... It was so beautiful. One of the teachers, actually Urasenke teacher here in Colorado, has this incredibly beautiful iga vase, and I had brought a camellia back from Alabama and gave it to him, and he arranged it in iga, and it was so beautiful.
Yeah, they work really well. What about the floor of the alcove? Do people do kagami mochi and do a big like horai ornament display?
My teacher does it in her machiai tokonoma. She always puts kagami mochi in the machiai.
Okay.
And sometimes once it's over, because you only leave the kagami mochi up for 15 days at the most. Then she switches.
Depend on the region. In Hiroshima, they do. There's the Tondo festival that happens around the 14th of Jan when you get out the kagami
and break it. Yeah.
Yep.
And then she puts out the suzu, the like shrine bells that the Miko use.
Miko is, yep.
She has bells, and then she has the like a ribbon that hangs off the back of it in the 5 colors, and that goes into her machiai tokonoma for the rest of that sort of extended period between January 1st and whenever Lunar New Year is. That's beautiful. What takes over. Really, it does have a really nice vibe to it. Sometimes she puts the bells on top of a sampo. So the stand, really, really lovely. Yeah, I almost feel sometimes at New Year like it's almost too easy. there's so much that you can do. And actually, one of the struggles I really have in doing any kind of chaji around the new year is I have to really pull myself back from not just overdoing.
But it does seem like the one time to go, above and beyond and do too much.
Yeah. Especially in Japan, like you've got nothing else to do.
That's
You've
true.
got a week of just like no one's doing anything.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, Adam, I assume because you were there for such an extended period of time, you did chaji, like Hatsugama chaji, right? At Wafudo. So one question I've always had, the prohibition that is present against cooking during those first 3 days of the new year, do they not apply to the tea room? Like kaiseki?
Depends what you define as cooking.
I mean, do you serve osechi?
Yeah, things are prepared in advance, but I mean, you still get out the flame and warm up the soup, don't you?
But there's more sort of prepared in advance than maybe would normally be for a chaji.
I don't think that's so strictly adhered to, no.
Yeah, I've always wondered if osechi would show up as part of the kaiseki.
Yeah.
But it also feels like osechi is such a thing within the home that maybe it wouldn't be appropriate in kaiseki.
This is a really good point. Yeah. So within the intimate gathering of the inner sanctum of Wafudo, the meal is basically like an elaborate sechi. But then when people come, when people come for Hatsugama, guests from outside Wafudo, it's not done within those first few days. It's a few days after that, and then you have like a nice sort of New Year's tenshin or something, because you've got people coming through en masse. You can't serve a full chaji of the people that come through, so it's just sort of a nice little tenshin that gives people a bit of sustenance and gets them through the chaji. But yeah, for the people that sort of live and make a living off operating at Wafudo, it's basically a sechi thing that is served.
Do we need to clarify?
Probably.
The first 3 days of the new year, there's no cooking in the household, and therefore there's this meal that's prepared ahead of time that's stored in jubako, and it's called osechi ryori, and all the foods in the osechi box can sort of last a longer period of time without being messed with, and all of them have deep symbolic meaning.
And the kurikenton always goes first.
And the kurikenton always goes first. There's always stuff that's left till the very end. By the third day, nobody wants the stuff that's been picked over. But it's all sort of to give both the household a time of rest, and also there's some stuff around giving the fire deity a rest and the kitchen deities a rest and things like that. So that's what this osechi ryori is. And nowadays in Japan, you can go to the department store and order the most elaborate osechi in the world to be delivered to your house. Actually, NHK, I think it was Japanology Plus, did a really great episode on osechi a couple of years ago, and you can probably find that on YouTube.
Yeah. I was extremely lucky. My homestay family were pretty old school in the way that they organised their family traditions. And then when I went back to live in Japan after I graduated, I was such good friends with my homestay family that I lived with them for a year again when I went back, before I got my own apartment. And they were like almost superstitious about this. Like, no, we're not doing anything in the kitchen. So everything was prepared, and the third day we were like, oh, I'm kind of a bit hungry. There's not much left. Eat some senbei, work it out. They just would not lift a finger, which was great, because I mean, they're basically have like a poke bell or a pager. The request of the man in the house, if they want something to eat, they have to go and do it right then and there. So it was really nice to see the women take the power back for the first 3 days of the new year and not do anything. It was really cool.
This is one of the things personally in my own life that I get pretty superstitious about is the work and cleaning around New Year. I studied Chinese martial arts before I did tea. This was 20 years ago, but I picked this up from being in that community around a Chinese teacher. You clean like 2 or 3 days before the new year. You do not clean on New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is a rest day and a stillness day. And then you absolutely cannot clean anything on New Year's Day. And the logic is that if you start cleaning on New Year's Day, all of the new luck that has entered the home, you might accidentally sweep it away. So this is a rule in our house, very much a rule in our house, is that I clean the day before New Year's Eve. I do a top to bottom clean in the house, and nothing, not even the dishwasher, gets run on New Year's Day.
That's great.
It is a completely dark day in the house so that the luck will stay in. Yeah. For some, like for me being an Aussie, we basically have no traditions or culture that we've contributed ourselves. It was just wonderful to see this going on. Like the first time I was in Japan and I heard this thing called osoji, it's like, oh, what a fantastic idea! Why doesn't everyone do that? Just beautiful tradition, and it just makes you feel good. And how great to set up the rest of the year with just cleaning everything, chucking all the stuff out that you don't need anymore, moving stuff on, and then just resting in that stillness and that cleanliness for the first couple of days of the year. It's beautiful. Yeah. Anthony, do you guys have anything that you do specifically for the new year at your house?
No, definitely nothing from my American traditions, and just normally have some tea with the family, but we also we haven't brought in some of the stricter Japanese traditions either, but it's actually something I've always wanted to do, is spend New Year's in Japan, but I think some of the things in the osechi ryori would be difficult for me to eat, so that might be a bad idea for me to do, but I think just trying to learn about the tradition more and then hopefully bring more of that into what we do would be really great to kind of appreciate some more, but a little afraid about the food part.
Just have mochi. Surely be right with that.
Yeah.
When you say you do tea, that's just you and your immediate family, right?
Yeah, and I think I don't know. So I think normally hatsugama, even in the tea schools, are done afterwards and like not on that first. So normally there's like this time, maybe these first few days that are sort of focused on the family or the immediate group inside the tea schools, and then the more open hatsugama happens afterwards. So yeah, we have a nice tradition of doing New Year's Day tea, and I've done an New Year's Eve tea as well. What is that called? Joya Gama. I haven't tried to do the charcoal thing or anything, but yeah.
I'm really curious about this because we don't do this in Ueda. I'd love to know anything you can tell me.
Yeah, Anthony, tell us what you know about it, and I'll see if there's anything different from what I've been told about this Joya tradition.
I think I can only cover the surface, but I something about having tea at night and trying to keep the charcoal through the night and make the first fire of the new year with the leftover charcoal, which I can't imagine there actually being unless you had a big heap in there, but maybe somehow. That's about all I know. Which actually, when thinking about this and what you were just talking about, the fire gods and the kitchen, it's interesting trying to think of how that fits in with all those ideas.
Mhm. This is when I don't know what this thing is called, but there's like this box that you can put over the row. It looks kind of like a flat-topped pyramid, and
Jotan.
it helps to stabilize that remaining smolder that's going on in the row, is what I was told. I've never actually seen one in person. I've only seen pictures of them. But yeah, basically what you said, Anthony, is what I've heard as well, that it's like this idea of sort of carrying the fire over from the old year into the new. And I think the impression I've always gotten is that New Year's Day, that first tea, has to happen pretty early for the reason you said, because you need to kind of build the fire late in the evening and start the new one pretty early in the morning. Otherwise, it's likely to go out. I also find it an interesting, and I'm sure it's just something I'm missing, right? Because I'm not Japanese, so there's some cultural piece that just isn't quite clicking for me yet. Of if everything else is sort of geared towards letting go and entering into the new, why are we carrying this piece over?
Yeah.
But I can also think of other really beautiful connections with fires, particular fires. So there's a particular fire at Hiezan, outside of Kyoto, the Tendaishu mountain at Enryakuji. There's a lantern there that was believed to have been lit by Saicho. Fire was taken from that lantern and taken away from Hiezan prior to the destruction of Hiezan by Nobunaga. And after the rebuilding of Enryakuji, where the other place that had some of that fire was, brought the fire back to Hiezan. So they view that as being a continuous fire that's gone on since Saicho. And there's also a fire like that, a candle or a lamp like that at Koyasan. So Kukai and Shingonshu, these lanterns that have been burning continuously since the early 9th century, and that really are tied into the spread of Buddhism and the presence of these great teachers. And I know, for example, I think it's the Wakasosho of Mushino Koji Senkei, who is actually a Tendai priest, which is a little bit of a break with tradition, right? Because usually they get ordained at Daitokuji, just like everybody else. But he did a chaji, I was told by my Mushino Koji Senkei friend, where he brought fire down from that lantern at Hiezan and used it to light the shitabi in his tea room. And he did this whole chaji surrounding this light. And for me, this is very emotional. As a Tendai priest, I feel very emotional when I think about it. And there's also this very famous saying that we attribute to Saicho, Ichigu o terasu. So gets translated in various ways, but I like the translation, light your corner, or light up your corner. Meaning you have to be the lamp just where you are, you know? You have to kind of shine this light wherever you are. So I think it's this beautiful idea, and maybe, I don't know. I don't know that has anything to do with why we carry the fire over from Joya to Hatsu, but it's something that comes to mind for me of just this. There's this power in the continuation of light, or this continuation of fire that's really, really beautiful.
So this almost doesn't need to be explained in some ways. That, like when you start talking about fire and people gathering around fire, it's like the roots of human culture, isn't it? It's like the absolute starting point of human culture.
Yeah.
So the more you try and define it, I think the more it slips away. It's just that I don't know. Like when I think the first thing I saw on this idea was a television show in Japan on Mushino Koji Senkei's Wakasosho doing this practice, And I instantly thought, oh my God, that is so beautiful. What a great idea. I don't know why, but I think it's just testament to like the reptilian part of my brain that started gathering around the fire with other human beings hundreds of thousands of years ago. There's something in the DNA that's just like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know.
Well, and there's something to me about that darkness of the new year, like New Year's Eve to New Year's Day. It's such a powerful liminal space, right? As we move from year to year, and maybe we need light to move through that liminality as well. You know, it's a scary time, especially when we get into sort of metaphysical feelings that come up as we move from one place to another. And
to think, like, after you do the tea and then you prepare the fire, the ash and whatever, to ensure that it keeps on smouldering through the dark, and then you go and have a sleep, and like in your dream, like of course your brain's not going to stop, so you'd be thinking about the fire and is it going to last and all that, and you wake up after about 4 or 5 hours sleep and then you check if it's still there. Like that whole process is it's really deeply ritualistic and taps into something quite profound in our subconscious, I think.
Yeah. And I know this idea, like Anthony, like you said, of doing tea sort of in that just nuclear family space first thing on New Year's Day, that actually plays into larger cultural traditions in Japan around the New Year, because you're supposed to have all these like greetings and interactions during the New Year's period. And it starts from on the first day of the New Year. This is true in China as well, as far as I understand it. The first day is really for the nuclear family. And then on the second day, you start to move into larger and larger circles as each day proceeds. So you only spend New Year's Day with your household, and then you start to see the extended family, and then you start to see close friends, and then business associates, etc. And I know my Buddhist teacher in Chiba Prefecture, his wife and his son are both very active tea people, and they have 2 tea rooms at the temple, and they always do, first thing on New Year's Day, they just together as a small family, they have tea. So I know that that's a big part of their family culture as well. And I actually, Adam, I know they drink obukucha. I don't know what they do, but I know that they have some form of obukucha.
Right.
Because he's mentioned it to me, that they had obukucha. And I've just always thought, oh, that just means New Year's tea. But no, the only one I've ever had is the one with the gold leaf in it. So.
Well, the sak chawans that they use, I don't know if they use it in the mote as well, but you have like the gold. Okay, what's all that about?
I think it's this. I mean, that's probably where the gold leaf being sprinkled on the tea actually. I've always assumed that's where it comes from, is because of those stacked chawan that we use when we do kasane jawan. Usually ours are
Is
red
it always
raku.
red? It's always red. Okay.
For omote senke, they're red raku, and the bottom one is the silver-lined bowl, and the top one is the gold-lined bowl. And as you use them over time, that gold and silver leaf lining sort of wears away, because it particle by particle is being mixed into the koicha that you're making each time you use the bowls. So you can have them re-lined after a while. I have seen online a set where I think one was black raku and the other was red raku. I've seen that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what is this all about? Is it just about doing kasane jawan, just making a lot of koicha, or is there why do we? I never actually thought about why that is a thing. I'm not sure I know.
I've only ever seen the gold and silver lined ones used at New Year.
Right. But why? Right.
But I've seen kasane jawan done, any time of the year when you have a large group, but you only use the gold and silver at New Year, is my understanding, or at Robiraki would be okay too, at least in Omote Senke. And I think it's that gold and silver are similar to the red and white, right, that we see as part of any celebratory omedetai kind of vibe. So, and by drinking gold and silver, you're hopefully internalizing that wish for wealth and prosperity. Yeah. And then I guess the red raku, because the red is,
More auspicious.
activating chi. And I mean, really, that's why it's auspicious, right? Red is a valuable color because it activates chi or ki, and therefore brings vitality. And of course, red and white come to be sort of stand-ins for the fluids of life, if we want to think of it that way. So that's why the musubi are always red and white, is because they're carrying that potency of the creative act. Yeah. Trying to think what else. Since we're talking about Joya, the other thing I always try to do, sometimes I'm really lazy, but I always try to ring one of the bells in the house 108 times on New Year's Eve. To drive away the 108 afflictions or kleshas, they're called in Sanskrit. Everybody always asks me, why do Buddhist and Hindu malas or prayer beads have 108 beads? It's because there are believed to be 108 sort of afflictive emotions or mental states. And I think really 108 means infinite, but somehow it became 108.
I'm sure there's more over the last 30 years of human history.
And those people who have been in Japan know that the big temples will ring those giant bells 108 times on New Year's Eve to drive away those afflictions before the new year comes. Yeah. Are there other things that you guys do for the new year?
Trying to think. If we go down more into the weeds with the Toriawa set, we were just talking about the stacked chaman. But like, is the daisu like a set thing for Hatsugama?
My teacher always uses daisu for Hatsugama.
Yeah.
And of course, Omote Senke, we use specifically Kyudaisu.
Yeah. For Hatsugama.
Instead of just period. Like our sort of standard daisu is Kyudaisu, unless we're using Take daisu, right? So the four-post, the Shin daisu, my understanding is Shin daisu in Omote Senke is really reserved for extremely high tamai, which most of us will never study because you have to study those at the Iamoto, I think, in the modern period. So if you're just doing daisu stuff, Q daisu.
That makes sense, yeah. It's like,
which is a two-post.
Shin daisu, not Shin daisu, but daisu is considered like Shin. Q daisu is Gyo and the Fukuro Dana so in most traditions of thinking, I think. We the gathering, like just with the family unit of Wafudo, they call that Hatsudate on New Year's Day, and they use the Fukuro Dana. My teacher back in the early 2000s always used Shin daisu for Hatsugama, and for Hatsugama at Wafudo for not just the in-group, but for many different people in the public, it's sort of become a battle of who has the most sophisticated taste as to what Tana will be used for that particular year. One of my good friends was the first person to scrap the idea of a daisu and used Okore Joku. You have the black lacquer like the Korean one, which was pretty damn nice. It was a pretty nice statement, but still keeping the formality. And some people have even used take daisu, which is quite uncommon in warrior schools, because it has probably a stronger relationship to Shinto. Shinto aesthetics that sort of works well with like the musubi yanagi and stuff that's hanging around it and whatever. But yeah, there's no sort of like steadfast set recipe.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, usually my experience has been for Robiraki, we usually do Hakobi, everything Hakobi. And then for Hatsugama, we usually use Daisu.
Mm. Would that be the two most formal events in both Ura and Omote? So you have the Robiraki and Hatsugama, and they're both sort of on par in formality, or not?
That holds up to me. What do you think,
Yeah?
Anthony?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes they call Robiraki the tea new year, right? So
Yeah.
that's normally up there. A close second, maybe. Yeah. How about for Ueda?
Yeah, they're both the same. Yeah, both the most formal. Yeah.
What sweets do you guys associate with Hatsugama?
I wanted. Thank you for bringing this up. I want because we have nothing. It's like bloody all the Kyoto schools have got their like set bang. This is this day bang. This is this one bang. Like, yeah. Nah, this year we might use this. No, we don't have anything set for Hatsugama.
We're always using Hanabira mochi.
I've never had Hanabira mochi.
Oh,
Yeah. It's amazing.
And gobo is like one of my most favorite things ever. So I actually really like to try it if anyone would like to make it for me.
Yeah, and my teacher, Anthony, I don't know if you've ever had it this way. My teacher, when she makes it, she puts just a little bit of white miso into that shiro-an.
Yeah, yum.
So, and then you got the candied burdock, right? The candied gobo.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was candied.
Yeah,
Okay.
usually the gobo is candied.
Ah.
it's amazing.
The only trick is it doesn't cut easily, so you just have to pick it up and bite it. But that seems to be pretty standard for us too, is that Hanabira mochi. I've also seen people do zenzai as a Hatsugama sweet, but I like zenzai better at Robiraki, even though technically Omote Senkei for sure, Robiraki is Inoko mochi.
Yeah.
That's our standard.
Same here.
Yeah, I love some of these sweets this time of year. They're just so loaded with meaning, I feel like.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that always comes to mind for me around the New Year's time period, you're supposed to, I think it's a week after New Year or 2 weeks after New Year when you eat the Nanakusagayu.
Yep.
Have you guys done Nanakusagayu?
So 7th it is on People's Day.
Right. And so this is the 7 herbs, and you put them into sort of a rice porridge.
Yep.
And this is a story that is close to my heart. A couple of years ago, my teacher decided to just delight me and one other student. We were so lucky. She said, "Why don't you come a little early for Keiko? You're the only ones coming today." And we got there, and she had started making okayu in the row. And so we had kayu chaji. So she just made this, rice gruel, and she had brought in some pickles and a couple of condiments to go with the rice gruel, and she was serving all of that just out of the row. And then we carried on and had koicha and uscha, and it was this like very heartwarming, wonderful gathering. And it's made me really think that it would be fun to do kayu chaji with Nanakusagayu as part of your New Year's celebration.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, is this a set thing? You have kayu chaji as well as you have the chahan gama?
I think the kayu chaji is what we would use chahangama for. Like that's what we would call it, as a kayu chaji.
Okay.
That's my understanding anyway, is that if you're going to use chahangama, one of the things you could do with it is this kayu chaji. I guess you could do standard rice in it as well, but you could do kayu chaji very easily with that kama. But this, I think, will be up your alley, Adam. I was reading somebody talking about how difficult it is to get those specific herbs outside of Japan.
Yeah.
So just make up your own mix. Like, what can you find where you are? Are there things that are native to your area? And if not, then go to the grocery store and put together a blend of 7 fresh herbs that will pair to make your nanakusagayu. It doesn't have to be those 7 herbs. Yeah,
absolutely. Especially if you're in somewhere like Australia, it's not even winter.
Yeah. Yeah. And really to me, what it's about is, if we think about going back to the lunar calendar, things should be just like it's just the start of spring. So you're getting a hold of these things that are just beginning to sprout. So you're consuming that new life that's coming out of the ground at that time of year. And I think about Tsuruko's Tea Journey. I'm sure you've probably both seen that. In the last section where she's doing the chaji in winter and she's out in the snow, she digs in the snow and there are things coming up under the snow that she finds that she uses in preparing the meal that she makes. So the natural world is not as asleep as we imagine it to be, even in deep winter.
There's something about the aesthetics there. I think that's like that emerging life is a big part of wabi that most people forget about. Wabi's people really concentrate on like sort of the rusty elements and the weathered elements, but that emerging life force is also a very big dynamic in wabi that most people overlook. But one of the things for Weta Sokoryu, the aesthetic of our school, like the seisei or the utsukushiki aesthetic, is very close to rin. I would say, if people are familiar with the idea of rin, and I mentioned before, my homestay family was very enthusiastic about guarding some of their traditions, and one of the things that they felt a personal responsibility about was getting me to see a crane from Siberia at New Year's time. And I had no idea why the hell they'd drive me out to like whoop whoop to see a crane in the snow. But okay, like rock the house, we're doing this thing today and everyone's really enthusiastic about it. Okay. And that was when I was living there. And then when I came back after I graduated university to study tea, like really seriously, one of my teachers told me a really beautiful story to describe the aesthetics of our school. And she said, think of it's New Year's morning, and there's been freshly fallen snow the night before, and the sun's rising over this field of freshly fallen snow. And then a crane lands right in the middle of the scene and is standing there with a beautiful straight posture, observing the landscape with the sun rising in its back. So that's utsukushiki, or that's rin more or less as well. And so being taken with my homestay family to see these cranes in whoop whoop suddenly became very relevant. And, so it's wonderful how these things pan out. But so that aesthetics, I think, too, at New Year's time is probably very relevant to a lot of Japanese aesthetics, at least my school of tea in particular as well.
Yeah, it makes me just wonder, like, in so many ways, I think we internalize or we inherit these symbols that we pick up at the new year, pine and bamboo and the crane and the tortoise and maybe plum blossoms, things like that. And we've sort of been told what this means and that means. But I don't know. I guess where I am in my own tea journey is I feel like it's really important that I'm developing my own relationships with these symbols so that when I bring them forward, they actually have meaning beyond just sort of, well, I was given this, so I'm putting it here. And I think finding ways to connect with a lot of these symbols is actually a beautiful part of the practice for us. It's a place where we all continue to grow and learn, is to touch these symbols and let them be alive.
Mm. Yeah. Well said.
Should we talk about scroll phrases?
It's a perfect time.
Sure.
All right. Well, the one that I thought I would share is Waki Yamakawa ni Mitsu. Waki Yamakawa ni Mitsu. So harmonious energy fills mountains and rivers.
Okay, yep.
That's the one my teacher always puts up for the new year. And yeah, it's sort of wish for all things to be well. Are there other phrases that people are used to seeing at the new year?
Yeah, we don't really have a set like scroll or phrase that we hang.
Mm-hmm.
But geez, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I really like it. What is that's the enigma of what that means.
Yeah.
And oof, it's a huge one.
Yeah.
And then the waki, I'll put it together. Oof.
Anthony, do you have any scrolls that strike you as particularly New Year's worthy?
Something with like fukuju or something like along those lines. But normally not just that. I don't think I've seen that, but something with those type of words in there, and kotobuki and
Yeah.
type of thing, and with cranes and yeah.
I mean, another symbol that gets used a lot for the new year, and it's one that I really love. I have a real passion for the image, is the flaming jewel, the Nyoi Hoju, which it's a complicated image in Japan. Is it a Buddhist image? Is it a Shinto image? Is it both? Sort of becomes a universalized image once Buddhism enters the scene. It's present as the jewel that's being carried by many Buddhist deities, like some forms of Kannon. Jizo carries it. Some of the wrathful deities carry it. Most of the wealth deities carry it. But then there's also the jewel that's associated with the imperial family, which originally was probably a magatama, which is this sort of kama-shaped stone. But over time, it becomes conflated with this wish-fulfilling jewel, the Chintamani jewel, that is associated with Buddhism. And if you get around Tibetan Buddhists, they always say that the secret of the Chintamani jewel is that it's actually bodhicitta, which is this awakened heart that seeks the benefit of all beings. That wish is actually the thing that answers all wishes. That is the wish-fulfilling jewel. But you'll see that flaming jewel brought in a lot around the new year as another symbol.
Yeah. This because that's like to transcend cultures and bring it over to Europe, like the philosopher's stone, the harmonization of the heart and mind, is sort of interpreted as in that Tibetan Buddhist sense, the bodhicitta. So that's a really nice one to sort of transcend borders at New Year's time. There's a lot of cultural significance around that image, and I'd be interested to know how many cultures include it as a very central image in their iconography.
Yeah.
Can you say that scroll again, please, TJ, that you brought up?
Yeah.
Waki what?
Waki Yamakawa ni Mitsu.
Ni Mitsu, as in
Nimitsu.
fills.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
So harmonious energy fills mountains and rivers.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's a good one.
Am I counting right? Is it 6 character one?
No, ni is not there, and Mitsu is the third character. So it, when you see it written, it's Waki Mitsu Yamakawa.
Okay.
Right. It's in the Chinese order, but it's read in the Japanese order. So
Yeah, I'm happy to learn this one. This is the first time.
Yeah, it's a really good one. Yeah. That's tasteful. Really good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful phrase, and I really appreciate, Adam, that you're pointing to. It may feel very simple on the surface, but there's actually a lot of depth to this wa and this ki. What does this really point to, and how does it really play out?
Isn't it fukuju? But like, just a more poetic way to say it.
Maybe some people read it that way. Maybe.
Yeah. What is God? It's infinite concept, that thing. God, it keeps me guessing, that one, tell you.
It's rare that the people on TeaLife Audio talk about something that renders them all speechless.
Yeah, I'm just going off. Yeah, it's a really beautiful image.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
I'm glad the three of us could come together and talk about this.
Yeah, me too.
That's a great one.
Maybe that's a good place for us to leave it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
The only other thing I want to say is this episode will be coming out in mid to late December. So I just want to wish all of our listeners a very happy new year, and hope that the year of the dragon brings many good things for everyone.
Same from here.
Same.
Well said.
Thank you both. It was great seeing you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to our listeners.
This has been a production of TeaLife Audio. Producing an episode requires a bit of time and money. We do the work for free and hope you will help us cover the cost. Go to tealife.audio/support to help us bring another episode to your tea world. The taste of matcha when there is no one to talk tea. TeaLife Audio.